They called me in despair. A woman, her voice broken by guilt, asked me, "Mr. Jung, if I cremate my husband's body, can he still be resurrected?" The silence that followed could have lasted an eternity, because what she was really asking wasn't about ashes, it was about faith. And this doubt, though ancient, is spreading like wildfire. Today, in a world that chooses practicality over the sacred, millions ask themselves the same question. If the body is reduced to dust, what happens to the promise of resurrection? The Bible is silent, the church hesitates, and it is in this silence that fear is born. But Carl Jung would say that fire is never just fire. It is a symbol, an archetype, a mirror of the unconscious. The same fire that consumes matter is what awakens the soul. And perhaps the problem isn't being cremated, but having forgotten what the body represents. The body as a temple is not just flesh, it is the fusion between matter and spirit, the stage where the divine and the human meet. When we reduce this mystery to a modern procedure, we are not only burning the body, but the meanings that sustain it. And this is where the video begins, between fear and faith, between fire and earth. Because what the Bible really teaches about cremation is not what you've been told. What's hidden in that silence can forever change how you understand death, resurrection, and God Himself. That morning, the phone rang as if it carried the weight of centuries. On the other end, a trembling voice tried to understand what faith cannot explain with words. The woman asked if her cremated husband would be resurrected on the last day. The silence that followed was not ignorance, it was reverence before the mystery. Carl Jung said that there are questions that do not seek answers, but awareness. And perhaps this is one of them. When life snatches away someone we love, it is not reason that cries out, it is the soul. And it is precisely there that spirituality reveals itself, not as a manual of promises, but as a mirror that reflects the abyss within us. The Bible, in its symbolic language, never simplified death. It speaks of dust, of breath, of return, of eternity. And between each verse, there is a space where faith breathes, a space that no doctrine completely fills. This woman was not seeking a theological explanation. She was seeking solace. She wanted to know if love can survive the fire, if the body as a temple would still have an altar on the other side. And it's curious how, in the face of loss, even the most skeptical person becomes a theologian. Because deep down, every human being wants to believe that what has been lived doesn't fade like ashes in the wind. This is how the journey begins, with a question that disarms the intellect and awakens the consciousness of faith. Jung understood that pain is the gateway to transformation, and that the fire that consumes also reveals. That woman, unknowingly, ignited a discussion that transcends religions, cultures, and centuries. What happens to the body when the spirit departs? In profound spirituality, the symbol of fire is never neutral. It is judgment and purification, destruction and rebirth. The Bible presents it sometimes as punishment, sometimes as divine light. And when it touches matter, it transforms everything, including certainties. Perhaps that is why modern man tries to control even death. He chooses the method, plans the destiny, but forgets that mystery is not negotiable. Ultimately, the flame of cremation rekindles the ancient dilemma between faith and reason, between the dust that returns to the earth and the soul that insists on remaining. And in the echo of this doubt, the true spiritual quest begins, because every great revelation begins with a loss. It was so with Job, with Abraham, with Mary before the empty tomb. The same happens to us when the world forces us to look at the invisible. Carl Jung would call this the instant when consciousness touches the collective unconscious, when a personal experience awakens a universal symbol, the departing body, the consuming fire, the remaining void. These are ancient archetypes passed down through history, shaping our understanding of life and death. And perhaps that is why that woman's question resonates so strongly. She wasn't just talking about her husband, but about all of us who fear disappearing. The fire she fears is the same one that burns within each of us, the fire of having to accept the unacceptable. But what comes after this acceptance is what we begin to discover when we look at the modern world and realize that something has changed in the way we deal with death. The world has changed silently, almost imperceptibly. Where once there were crosses planted in the ground, today porcelain urns stand. Modern man, driven by haste and practicality, has begun to transform even the way he deals with the sacred. Carl Jung said that every external change reveals an internal change, and the rise of cremation is the perfect mirror of this shift in consciousness. We live in times when the symbol of fire has ceased to be fear and has become convenience. The same fire that purified in the scriptures is now used to shorten the time of farewell. And perhaps this reveals more about our spirituality than we imagine. The Bible, which spoke of burial as an act of faith, now observes man surrendering bodies to the flames, believing it is merely a practical choice. But behind this decision lies something deeper, the unconscious attempt to control the uncontrollable, to simplify the mystery of death. The body as a temple, once shrouded in rites and silence, is now treated as matter to be resolved. Faith has given way to logistics, eternity to cost-benefit analysis. Contemporary spirituality, lost amidst consumerism and haste, has forgotten that the time of mourning is also the time of the soul. Jung asserted that modern man suffers not from a lack of faith, but from an excess of distractions. When the body is reduced to ashes in a few hours, the psychic process of farewell is also shortened. Fire, which once symbolized purification, now symbolizes efficiency. And yet, something within us resists. Perhaps it is the ancestral memory of tombs, of candlelit wakes, of prayers murmured over the dust. Because deep down, matter and spirit continue to dialogue, even when we pretend otherwise. The consciousness of faith is silent, but obstinate. It refuses to accept that death can be treated as a quick service. And every time someone chooses cremation because it is more practical, the soul seems to ask, practical for whom? But not all is desolation. The rise of cremation also reveals a new quest, that of returning the body to nature, of uniting humanity with the cycle that created it. The person who returns the ashes to the sea repeats, without realizing it, the ancient phrase from the Bible, "From dust we came, to dust we shall return." The difference is that now the return is accelerated, as if the world wanted to shorten the reunion between body and spirit. Perhaps this explains the growing fascination with alternative ceremonies, memorial gardens, and rituals of dispersal. Even when they say they don't believe, human beings try to eternalize the presence of those they love. Cremation has thus become a new language of faith, confusing, modern, but still laden with symbolism, because humanity may change its rites, but it will never escape the need to give meaning to the fire that consumes and the life that insists on continuing. And it is at this point that the most disconcerting silence of all arises. The silence of the scriptures. No verse explicitly states, "You shall not cremate." No prophet wrote that fire should be avoided. And yet this silence speaks. Carl Jung used to assert that the unconscious communicates more through what is omitted than through what is said, and the Bible follows this same symbolic language. What it doesn't say about fire reveals as much as what it affirms about the earth. Between the lines, it's possible to feel the weight of a tradition that has always associated burial with faith and fire with judgment. This silence is not carelessness, it is divine pedagogy. It is the space where the consciousness of faith is tested. When God is silent, the human being projects, and this projection reveals the hidden content of the soul. The absence of a direct prohibition against cremation does not signify approval, but an invitation to reflection. It's as if spirituality itself were saying, look inside before deciding what to do with what remains outside. And this inner gaze is what is most frightening, because it forces us to confront the fact that even after death, we continue trying to negotiate with the mystery. The Bible, from Genesis to Revelation, is built upon a web of symbols. Dust represents origin. The body as a temple symbolizes the divine dwelling, and fire is both purifying and destructive. Everything in it is archetypal. Everything is a mirror. The silence surrounding cremation is not indifference. It is symbolic tension. The absence of commandment is an opportunity for conscience to choose what dogma does not prescribe. Jung saw in this type of dilemma the embryo of true faith, not the kind that repeats, but the kind that decides. Living faith is not born from blind obedience, but from the responsibility of thinking with an awakened heart. When the sacred text says neither yes nor no, man needs to become an interpreter of himself. And that is when spirituality ceases to be theory and transforms into a path. Because every time the Bible is silent, it is, in fact, returning the question, what is inside you? And it's curious how this silence is more unsettling than any prohibition. Human beings prefer clear commandments. They alleviate the weight of choice. But God, in his mysterious pedagogy, uses the unspoken as a tool for spiritual maturation. Fire, then, becomes a symbol of consciousness. What burns within me when the text doesn't answer? What burns inside me when I need to decide between the earth and the flames? Carl Jung said that God's silence is the echo of our unconscious asking for light. And perhaps that's why the Bible is silent on this point, so that man may learn to listen to what his own heart says when the fear of death speaks loudly. The silence of the scriptures is not empty. It is a fertile field where faith is sown and the Spirit learns to discern. And it is from this ambiguous ground that the symbol of fire is born, the same fire that humanity has tried to understand since the beginning of time, sometimes as punishment, sometimes as purification, sometimes as a promise. From the first divine breath upon matter, fire has occupied an ambiguous place in the spiritual history of humanity. It warms and destroys, illuminates and consumes. Carl Jung saw it as a symbol of consciousness, something that both reveals and burns what it touches. In the Bible, fire never appears by chance. It is the face of judgment in Sodom and Gomorrah. It is the glow of the burning bush before Moses. It is the altar where sacrifices become a pleasing aroma to God. Fire is the boundary between the human and the divine, the point where matter bows before the spirit. Therefore, when someone asks if cremation prevents resurrection, the true answer lies not in logic, but in symbolism. Because fire, more than reducing the body to ashes, confronts us with the question, what within me needs to be burned so that what is eternal may remain? Jung said that every individuation process goes through a kind of psychic furnace, a place where the ego is exposed to the flame of truth and the spirit is refined like gold. The same is true of faith. Either it withstands the fire, or it was never true faith. Fire is also a mirror of the consciousness of faith. It shows who still seeks the approval of men and who has already found the gaze of God. When the body, as a temple, is surrendered to the flames, the human being relives the ancestral drama of surrender, sacrifice. There is nothing more symbolic than transforming flesh into light, matter into dust, time into eternity. But the difference lies in the intention. Biblical fire is always guided by purpose, to purify, to consecrate, to reveal. When fire is used without awareness, it becomes mere consumption. When it is used with faith, it becomes a portal. Spirituality does not fear fire, it fears the emptiness of meaning. The Bible never condemned it, but rather imbued it with responsibility. The symbol of fire is not the enemy of man. It is a reminder that everything impure must pass through the flame before being restored. And perhaps that is why, in almost every culture, fire is seen as the instrument of rebirth, proof that even destruction can conceal a divine purpose. But not everyone is ready for this vision. Many still see fire only as punishment, forgetting that the same element that destroys also illuminates the path of those who traverse the darkness. Carl Jung called this paradox the alchemy of the soul. Fire transforms the lead of fear into the gold of wisdom and pain into awareness. The Bible confirms this when it shows that the prophets, before being sent, were touched by fire. Isaiah had his lips purified by a live coal. The disciples received tongues of fire at Pentecost. Nothing was created without something being burned first. Perhaps modern cremation, even unknowingly, repeats this ancestral archetype, that of inevitable transformation. Because in the end, fire is not the end, it is the rite that precedes rebirth. And it is at this point that the metaphor of the seed which dies to flourish begins to emerge in Christian spirituality. Burying a body is an act that goes beyond ritual. It is a silent confession of faith. When someone returns the body to the earth, they are saying without words that they believe in its return. The Bible describes this gesture as planting a seed. The body is placed in the soil not to disappear, but to transform. What is sown in corruption will be raised in incorruption, wrote Paul. And Carl Jung would see in this a universal archetype, death preparing for rebirth. Burial is the physical mirror of spiritual hope. The body, finite matter, rests in the womb of the earth, and the soul, eternal breath, continues its journey. The body as a temple fulfills its cycle. It returns to the dust from which it came, not in defeat, but in reverence. Spirituality is revealed in this surrender, where the fear of death gives way to the confidence that life does not end, it only changes form. And whoever has felt the weight of a shovel of earth falling on a coffin knows that sound is, at the same time, an end and a promise. Carl Jung would say that this act symbolizes a return to the collective unconscious, the immersion of matter in the deep waters of the spirit. The body, dissolving, nourishes the earth. The spirit, liberating itself, ascends to the light. It is a cycle that unites faith and nature, science and mystery. The consciousness of faith at this moment is not merely belief, it is perception. The Christian who buries their dead repeats, in an archetypal way, Christ's own gesture: to die, to rest, to rise again. This is why, for centuries, burial has been considered the ultimate symbol of Christian hope. The earth is not the end, it is the womb. The tomb is not the prison, it is the portal. And spirituality, when understood at this level, becomes liberating, because it does not require understanding how dust will become body again, only trusting that the same God who breathed life from nothing can restore what was lost. But in the modern rush to resolve grief, we forget the symbolic value of this return to the earth. Cremation shortens the process, while burial lengthens it, and perhaps that is precisely what makes it sacred. To bury is to wait, and waiting is a verb that demands faith. It is the time of the soul, the time of remembrance, the time of new beginnings. The man who covers the body of the one he loved with earth participates even unknowingly in an age-old mystery, that of the seed that dies to bloom. And if faith is the soil of the spirit, burial is the gesture that plants eternity. The body sleeps, but hope awakens. And it is from this hope that the next symbol is born, the one that reminds us that this body was not a mere shell, but a temple molded by the hands of God, where matter and spirit danced for a brief instant in time. Carl Jung used to say that the body is the visible expression of the soul, that within it lies the unconscious, the symbols, the invisible traces of what we believe and fear. The Bible confirms this sublimely. Do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit? The body then ceases to be merely biology. It becomes an altar. Each scar is a prayer, each breath a form of worship. True spirituality begins when consciousness perceives that matter and spirit are not enemies, but allies, and the body as a temple is the link between the two worlds. When we care for it with respect, we honor it as a divine dwelling. When we neglect it, we profane it with indifference. Faith is not merely an ethereal discourse, it is an embodied practice. God does not dwell only in the invisible, He dwells in the flesh that touches, in the tear that falls, in the gesture that welcomes. Matter, when consecrated, reveals the divine. And perhaps that is why the fate of the body, to be buried or burned, awakens so much unease. It represents more than appearance. It represents meaning. The consciousness of faith understands that the body is transient but not disposable. It is the tent where the spirit moves, the tool by which the soul writes its story. When someone treats the body with reverence, it is not vanity, it is gratitude. Mature spirituality recognizes that the same clay molded by God in Genesis still pulsates in every cell. And when death arrives, the body is not sacred trash. It is a sacred garment that has fulfilled its purpose. Cremation or burial in this context cease to be mere methods and become expressions of what we believe about life. Jung saw the body as a symbol of the manifested psyche, a house where the unconscious finds form. The form dissolves, but the meaning remains. The body falls apart, but the temple it represented is never lost, because the union between matter and spirit does not depend on the duration of the body, but on the intention that inhabited it. And when someone asks if God can restore what fire has consumed, the answer lies in this understanding. If the body is a temple, the builder is eternal. Fire may consume the structure, but it will never destroy the architect. The spirit that inhabited it remains, and it is this spirit that will recreate it in due time. The Bible speaks of a God who molds from dust and resurrects from ashes, and Jung would call this the myth of recreation, the eternal dance between destruction and rebirth. The body returns to matter, the spirit returns to its origin, and the cycle closes. But this cycle, instead of being an end, is the promise of a new beginning. And it is precisely here that the question burns again with force. If the body is a temple, what happens when the temple is given over to the fire? Does the fire extinguish the divine, or does it merely reveal it in a new form? This is the doubt that leads to the central question, the same one that tormented that woman and echoes in millions of consciences. This is the question that has spanned centuries and hearts. If the body is consumed by fire, can God restore it? The fear behind it is not about ashes, it's about oblivion. Man fears disappearing, fears that dust will not be enough for the miracle. Carl Jung would say that this doubt arises from the tension between faith and control. We want to trust, but we also want assurance. The Bible, however, answers symbolically and relentlessly. The Creator's power does not depend on the integrity of creation. The same God who molded Adam from dust can raise any body from the ashes. Faith is not based on matter, but on promise. And yet the human mind seeks logic where there is only mystery. Cremation, for many, seems to break the natural cycle of return to the earth, but perhaps it only accelerates it. Fire accomplishes in hours what time would do in years. The difference lies not in the final destination, but in the speed of the process. In the end, both the buried body and the cremated body return to the same origin, dust. What remains is the breath, The awareness of faith must be greater than the fear of the method, because fire has no power over the spirit, and the earth cannot imprison the eternal. The Bible describes resurrection as transformation, not restoration. It is sown a natural body. It is raised a spiritual body, wrote Paul. It is a transmutation, the symbol of fire within life itself. Jung would see in this a profound archetype, the dissolution of form to reveal essence. Faith, then, is not believing that the old body will return identical, but trusting that the new body will be born from that which fire cannot touch, the soul. The body as a temple is rebuilt not with flesh and bones, but with purpose and glory. It is the spirit that recalls the original design. And if God can call into existence what never existed, why couldn't he restore what was once dust? Resurrection, after all, is not a repair, it is a creation. The question of cremation, therefore, becomes less about technique and more about trust. It is not a matter of choosing between earth and fire, but between doubt and faith. Mature spirituality understands that the symbol is only the veil, the content lies beyond it. God is not limited by time, by chemistry, nor by human decisions. The body, being a temple, can be destroyed, but the builder remains. Faith is the flame that does not go out even when all others are extinguished, and whoever understands this realizes that resurrection is less a future event and more a present truth. The power to transform what was into what will be. Because if fire can destroy the body, it can also reveal the gold of the soul. And it is in this paradox that the history of the Church is situated, trying to balance tradition, symbol, and redemption in a world that has learned to burn its own rituals. For centuries, the Church viewed fire with suspicion. It believed that burning a body was denying the promise that it would rise on the last day. And it wasn't just a matter of doctrine, it was symbolic. The earth represented hope, fire, judgment. The Bible always associated the body as a temple with the sacredness of burial. Abraham bought Sarah's tomb. Joseph of Arimathea offered his to Jesus. Each burial was a public testimony of faith in the resurrection. When the first groups began to advocate cremation, they did so not for spiritual reasons, but for ideological ones. Many of them rejected the Christian faith, seeing the body only as matter and the spirit as an abstraction. Cremation, then, was a kind of protest against the belief in eternal life. Therefore, the Church reacted firmly. Carl Jung would say that this conflict was not only theological, but symbolic. The collective unconscious of Christendom saw in fire the image of punishment and in burial the image of promise. It was a clash between archetypes, destruction and rebirth, judgment and hope. Over time, however, something began to change. The modern world, guided by reason, economics and ecology, began to rethink ancient rituals. Faith needed to engage with reality. The Church, then, looked at the Bible with new eyes, without betraying its symbolism, but seeking to understand it in the light of faith. In 1963, the Vatican, under Paul VI, lifted the ban on cremation, recognizing that many did not choose it out of spiritual denial, but out of necessity. Fire, after all, can also be seen as purifying, not just condemnatory. The 2016 document reaffirmed this view. What matters is not the method, but the intention. If the decision does not stem from a rejection of faith, there is no sin. Spirituality, then, took a step beyond dogma. The Church learned what Jung always taught, that symbols need to evolve, otherwise they die. Fire, once seen as a threat, came to be recognized also as a possibility, but this doctrinal shift did not erase the appeal of burial. For the Church, it remains the most complete expression of Christian hope, because to bury is to hope, and to hope is to believe. The body in the earth is still the most visible symbol of the promise of resurrection. Cremation, in turn, has become an alternative that demands awareness and respect. According to doctrine, the ashes should be kept in a sacred space, columbariums, churches, cemeteries, to preserve the link between body and faith. Thus, fire has been reintegrated into the realm of the sacred, not as a substitute, but as a transformed symbol. Jung would say that this represents the integration of the repressed opposite, the recognition that light also dwells within flames. And when religion and psychology meet at this point, something is revealed. Faith, to remain alive, needs to learn to embrace the mystery it once tried to avoid. And it is in this mystery that mourning and memory intertwine, transforming ashes and tombs into anchors of love. When someone departs, the body that remains becomes a map of longing. The tomb, with its cold stone and withering flowers, is not just a place, it's an emotional anchor. Carl Jung said that human beings need symbols to endure the invisible, and the cemetery is one of the oldest of them. The Bible understands this. From Abraham to the buried Christ, the tomb has always been the meeting point between faith and pain. It is there that the body, as a temple, rests and the soul rises. It is there that the consciousness of faith is renewed, while the living learn the meaning of waiting. Mourning, in its deepest form, is a silent liturgy. The act of visiting a tomb, lighting a candle, touching the name engraved on the stone, is the human attempt to keep alive the connection between matter and spirit. Because death, when it has a place, hurts less. It becomes bearable, nameable. But the modern world, which seeks speed in everything, has also wanted to simplify pain. And just as it hastens funerals, it transforms grief into something that must be overcome, not lived through. Cremation, in this context, brought a new form of mourning, mobile, symbolic, and sometimes dispersed. The ashes that fit in an urn or are scattered to the wind represent paradoxically freedom and loss. Some keep them at home as a sacred remembrance. Others scatter them at sea as a return to the whole. But there is a silent danger in this emotional modernity. Without a physical point to return to, the pain risks dissolving into oblivion. Jung would call this the repression of grief, when the unconscious, without symbolic space to process the loss, transforms longing into existential emptiness. The Bible, on the other hand, has always given mourning the time it deserves. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. To mourn is faith. It is to tell the world that love existed and still exists. The tombs and the ashes are merely different ways of sustaining this love. But without the ritual, without the symbol, man loses his way back to himself. Spirituality is not measured by where bodies rest, but by how the living keep the flame alive. A tomb can be a temple, and an urn too, if the heart that remembers does so with faith. The symbol of fire, in this sense, remains alive. It transforms the bond, but does not extinguish it. The body, once a physical temple, now becomes a living memory. The consciousness of faith matures when it understands that the sacred is not bound to matter, but to the meaning we give to it. Whether it's a tombstone under the sun or a handful of ashes on the sea, what truly matters is the memory that transforms absence into presence. Jung would say that mourning is not the end of the relationship, but the change in its language. And it is precisely in this change that the deepest beauty of faith is hidden, the certainty that what love has consecrated, neither time nor fire can consume. And it is from this certainty that the final decision is born, not about the body, but about the soul. The decision between fire and earth is actually a decision between fear and faith. When a person chooses the fate of their body, they reveal the state of their soul. Carl Jung said that every external choice is a reflection of an inner movement, and deciding what to do with the body as a temple is one of the deepest expressions of the consciousness of faith. The Bible doesn't dictate the method, but it demands the purpose. The question isn't what to do with the body, but rather with what intention will I do it. Burying or cremating in themselves are not spiritual acts. They become spiritual when moved by reverence. The body is more than a shell. It is a testimony. Each cell held memories, prayers, gestures, and loves. To treat this body with respect is to honor the Creator who shaped it. But when the choice is guided only by haste, economy, or convenience, something is lost, not in the ashes, but in the meaning. Spirituality begins to wither when the sacred becomes mere logistics, and the modern world, with its haste and disbelief, risks transforming the miracle of saying goodbye into a mere procedure. Faith is deciding consciously, even without understanding everything. Jung would say that the truly religious person is not the one who repeats dogmas, but the one who endures the mystery. The spiritual decision, therefore, is a mirror. It reveals whether we seek to please tradition, fear, or inner truth. The Bible calls us to choose with an awakened heart. Whatever you do, do it for the glory of God. Thus, what defines the value of cremation or burial is not fire or earth, but devotion. A body cremated with love and prayer can be more sacred than a body buried with indifference. The consciousness of faith does not measure symbols, it inhabits them. The person who understands this does not live trapped in the doubt of can I or can't I, but in the serenity of why. Spirituality does not demand ritual perfection, it demands pure intention. And each decision made with faith becomes a silent testimony of hope. And it is precisely this hope that keeps the fire burning within us. Because the true miracle lies not in how the body ends, but in who will raise us up in the end. The spiritual decision is the last opportunity a human being has to preach their own message. It is the final act of the earthly script, and like every ending, it carries the power to inspire those who remain. Jung believed that the soul leaves impressions on the world, subtle echoes that continue to transform realities even after departure. The Bible confirms, though he dies, he will live. This is the essence of faith, trusting that dust is not the end, but a promise, that ashes are not oblivion, but fertile ground for eternity. That matter returns to its origin, but the spirit continues its journey. And in the end, what matters most is not the form of farewell, but the meaning it carries. Because true faith does not fear fire or the tomb, it crosses them. And it is this journey that prepares us for the ultimate revelation, hope that never dies, life that never ends, and the God who never forgets his own. They called me in despair. A woman, her voice broken by guilt, asked me, "Mr. Jung, if I cremate my husband's body, can he still be resurrected?" The silence that followed could have lasted an eternity, because what she was really asking wasn't about ashes. It was about faith, and this doubt, though ancient, is spreading like wildfire. Today, in a world that chooses practicality over the sacred, millions ask themselves the same question. If the body is reduced to dust, what happens to the promise of resurrection? The Bible is silent, the church hesitates, and it is in this silence that fear is born. But Carl Jung would say that fire is never just fire. It is a symbol, an archetype, a mirror of the unconscious. The same fire that consumes matter is what awakens the soul. And perhaps the problem isn't being cremated, but having forgotten what the body represents. The body as a temple is not just flesh, it is the fusion between matter and spirit, the stage where the divine and the human meet. When we reduce this mystery to a modern procedure, we are not only burning the body, but the meanings that sustain it. And this is where the video begins, between fear and faith, between fire and earth. Because what the Bible really teaches about cremation is not what you've been told. What's hidden in that silence can forever change how you understand death, resurrection, and God himself. So, in the end, the question was never about fire or earth. It was about faith. Because what truly defines eternity is not the fate of the body, but the state of the soul. Carl Jung said that human consciousness only awakens when forced to confront the mystery, and nothing is more mysterious than death. The Bible confirms the dust will return to the earth, but the spirit will return to God who gave it. The question is, while we are still alive, what are we doing with this body He entrusted to us? Do we care for it as a temple or treat it as an object? Do we honor the soul that inhabits it or merely use it until it breaks? Because in the end, how we deal with death is a reflection of how we live. Spirituality is not measured in rituals, but in reverence, and every decision made with faith becomes a silent testimony of love and hope. And now, perhaps it's time for you to ask yourself, what truly motivates me? Fear of the fire or trust in the Creator? Have I been living as one who believes in the resurrection or as one who only fears the end? Because faith is not the absence of doubt, it is a choice in the face of it. It is deciding every day that dust is not defeat, but return. That death is not the end, but a passage. And that the body, this temporary temple, is merely the shell of something that fire cannot touch. God doesn't need ashes to fulfill promises. He only needs faith. If this reflection touched you deeply, don't let the learning end here. Delve deeper, question, awaken. Write in the comments what this topic made you see. Sometimes the first step of faith begins with a simple confession. And if you want to continue understanding spirituality in the light of psychology and the Bible, subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, and walk with me on this path between the invisible and the eternal. Because understanding death is ultimately the first step in learning to live.